Well, hey, I want to thank you for joining us today. We're actually wrapping up a series we've been in for the last few weeks. It's called 2020 Part 2. And basically, what we've been doing in this series is sort of acknowledging reality we've all experienced. 2020 has been tough, it's been difficult, and we're only halfway through it. So, how do we keep going? And like I said, we're wrapping it up today. So, if it's your first time with us or if you've missed any of it, I'm going to highly encourage you, if you don't have it already, download our app, because on that app, not only can you stay connected with our church in this season of being online, you can go back and you can catch all of the series, because it's really been great. It's been helpful for me and been helpful for our team, and hopefully it's been helpful for you as well, because the way we move forward in 2020 is the way we've always moved forward, is with Jesus. And it's doing the things He's asked us to do. And in this season especially, some of those things have been difficult. They're tiring, they're exhausting. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm tired of social distancing. I'm tired of quarantining. I'm tired of not knowing when we're going back to school. And so for this entire series, we've been going back to one verse, and it's this: let's not get tired of doing what is good. I love that verse, and it's been so helpful for us because it's a reminder. If it's good, we do it. Following Jesus is good, and so we do it when we feel like it, when we don't feel like it. And as we've been talking about this entire series, the verse gives us a promise. It says, at just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. And the entire point of this series has been trying to encourage you and encourage me and encourage all of us to not give up, to continue to lean into Jesus, to continue to love other people, to continue to love our friends and our family and our neighbors and our coworkers, and to trust Jesus in this crazy season of uncertainty. And today, as we sort of wrap up the series, I kind of want us to turn a little bit, because a lot of the series we've been talking about our personal behaviors, and specifically the way we treat other people and the way we interact with other people. Last week we talked about bringing peace to situations. And today, as we move forward, I want to talk about a choice I can make and you can make, and I think we can all make, to not only bring peace, but kind of to establish peace, to help settle our homes, to help settle our neighborhoods, to help even settle Horry County. And it all revolves around a word that, even when I put it up on the screen, you're going to laugh, because it's a word we haven't experienced in a really long time. And that word is normal. Don't you miss normal? Don't we all miss normal? Normal used to just be, we took it for granted and it was so common we never even thought about it. But right now, normal would just seem so great, because normal provides routines. Normal provides certainty. Normal provides clarity. Normal provides what's expected. And pretty much since mid-March and all this dealing with COVID, normal is a thing we haven't really had. And specifically for us today, the reason normal matters is because when things are normal, we develop habits. And habits are what really help us do life together. Even for those of us that feel like we are completely spontaneous and everything just happens, our brains have created habits. Think about the last time you put your shoes on, you were getting ready for work, and you tied your shoes. How many of you actually spent any time thinking about how to tie your shoe? None of us, because our brains create habits. Several years ago, I read a fascinating book called The Power of Habit by a man named Charles Duhigg. And he explains the value of habits for our brains. See, our brains are actually very lazy. Our brains live in constant fear of running out of energy. So anything they can convert to a habit, anything they can convert to autopilot, they do, because it's one less thing they have to think about. And in his book, The Power of Habit, this is how Charles Duhigg describes habits. He calls them shortcuts created by our brain to save energy. Now, I know you're wondering, what in the world does this have to do with church and moving forward? It has everything to do with it, as we're going to see in just a second. Because one of the things he does in this book is he diagrams how our brains create habits. And so I want to explain to you how our brains create habits, because I'm telling you, it's going to propel us today, and it's going to prepare us for where I believe God wants to take us in the rest of 2020. So here's what Charles Duhigg explains about how we create habits. He says, creating a habit, it starts with a trigger. It starts with a need. It starts with a desire. You walk in the door, you get home, you're a little hungry, you're at your desk, you're a little bored, you walk into your closet and you put on a pair of shoes. It's a trigger. It's something that we need to do. The next thing our brain does is it develops a routine. Through trial and error, we learned how to tie our shoes. and that routine became developed, and we did it over and over and over again. When we're bored at work, when it's the middle of the day, what do? We pick up our phone. We start scrolling through social media. When we get home at night, we're a little hungry, what do? We walk into the pantry, walk into the kitchen. That's that routine, and the way it becomes a habit is the trigger leads to a routine that experiences a reward. We get something out of it. Our shoes stay tied and we can leave. We scroll through social media, we see something that makes us laugh, we see something, well, more than likely makes us upset, and then we get frustrated and we're lost for an hour because we start texting people. We get home and we're hungry, we go to the pantry, we get something to eat. And the more we run this habit loop, that he calls it, the more we run this habit loop, the more ingrained the habit becomes in our lives. Again, it's why you haven't thought about tying your shoes probably since you were 6 or 7 years old. Once you learned it, the brain locked it away and you can just do it. Now, these habit loops have been formed in our brains ever since we were born. You probably have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of triggers that leads to habits. Your brain is constantly developing new habits, new routines, because it's always looking for what can I automate? What can I make regular? What can I make normal? Now, inject COVID into habits. In mid-March, the vast majority of habits and systems and routines I had, you had, and we all have disappeared. And what happened instead was now when we experience a trigger, when we have a thing that we have relied on over and over and over again, you know what's happened now? The routine is gone. We don't have the pleasure of just running out to our favorite restaurant whenever we want. Now we have to think about it. I don't know, do I want to do that? Is that okay? We don't have the ability to just call that person and say, hey, why don't you come over to the house? We have to think, can we invite them over to the house? What if they've been doing? I don't know, they traveled last week. You know, all the routines of our life. You know, everybody remember the glorious routine of most mornings of driving your vehicle to a nice building where they took your children for free for like 6 hours, 8 hours. Remember that glorious routine? It's gone. And so our brains are still experiencing those triggers. They're still experiencing the needs I have and you have and we all have. And they're trying to fire those habits and they're trying to fire those habits and there is no routine. The vast majority of our life has been shaken up by COVID. And because there's been no routine, guess what? We never experience a reward. And so our brains are working overtime. They're working as hard as they possibly can to try to figure out how in the world can we survive? How can we keep going? And what I do and what you do and what most of us do when that happens, is we begin to long for normal. We begin to lament the loss of normal. We keep looking for normal. We keep searching for normal. We keep saying, normal's got to be around the corner. Where's normal? So we hold on to the habits, we hold on to the patterns, and we keep saying, no, this time the routine's going to work. This time it's going to be there. This time it's going to be okay. And I'll just ask the question, is that working for you? Is that working for any of us? See, I have a suggestion for us today. And I have a suggestion that I'm convinced if we take up and if we admit this is what's happening, this is the habit loop, this is the structure we live in, but normal right now is gone. I believe normal will come back. I believe one day we will look back on COVID as a period of time we went through and we'll be able to see each other again and gather again and send our kids again. We won't have to wear masks everywhere. I believe that's going to happen. But I don't know when that's going to happen. And you don't know when that's going to happen. And even bigger than not knowing when, I have no control over when that happens. And you have absolutely no control over when that happens. So rather than spending one more second lamenting the loss of normal, rather than spending one more second trying to make the old habits work, trying to chase the old routines, what if we decided to try something different? What if today, as we move forward into 2020, despite all the uncertainty and all the things we have no control over, what if we all decided as a people, what if we decided to embrace this idea? that until we can get back to normal, let's choose to embrace a new normal. Until we can get back to the way things used to be, rather than lamenting the loss, let's create a new normal. Let's embrace this season. Let's embrace the uncertainty. Let's embrace the fact that we still have no idea when our kids are going back to school. Let's embrace the fact that we still don't know what's going to happen this fall with college football. We don't know. Let's embrace that. And quick side note, I guess I kind of harp on this. You know, we never knew. Like, we never actually had the certainty we thought we had, especially living in Myrtle Beach. If anything's taught us that we don't have certainty, you know, this isn't the first fall that we've had some uncertainty around school. I think, 3 of the last 4 storms have come and we've had to adjust. Things happen. This is a part of life. And our God, who was good in every one of those adjustments, is good in this adjustment. See, He was God of the old normal, but do you know He's also God of the new normal? And even though this is surprising us, and even though this makes us feel overwhelmed and this makes us feel unequipped, you know, God is sitting there saying, guys, I got you. I knew this was coming. I've prepared you for this season. And if you'll just lean into me and you'll let me walk you into this new normal, I promise you're going to discover I'm right there. And it might end up being better than you thought it would. So, what I want to do today is very simple. I want to present a path to new normal. I'm going to do it 2 ways. Number 1, I want to take you to a scripture because I want to show you what Paul says the church's role is in this moment. And then 2, I want to take you to a conversation I had earlier this week with my wife Danielle and Eric and April Colquitt about, you know, not only personally, but also how we as a church want to partner with you in this season to begin to create this new normal. Now, like I said, I want to start with the text, and specifically I want to start with Paul, a letter he wrote to the church at Ephesus. It's called the book of Ephesians, and this letter is about the church. And in this letter, he is explaining the church to Christians, and he's explaining the value of the church. And in Ephesians 4, he basically explains what God did to prepare the church. And then he says, because God's prepared the church, here's the church's job in this season, in all seasons. And here's what he says. He begins this way. He says, these are the gifts that Christ gave to the church. Now, the reason Christ gave gifts to the church is because He was trying to equip the church. He was trying to prepare the church because for Jesus, the church, the gathering of His people, is the mechanism by which He wants to change the world. It's the mechanism by which He wants to bring people to Him. He wants to turn people into Christians. He wants to bring them back to new life, and then He wants to equip them to go out and love other people and bring other people into His kingdom as well. That's what the church is. And so because of that, because it was so important, He gave the church gifts. And here are the gifts. He says He gave them the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and teachers. Now, He's talking about several different groups here. When He says the apostles, He's literally talking about the men that walked with Jesus. He's talking about the Apostle Paul. He's talking about this very specific group of people who were uniquely gifted and called by Jesus to begin to spread His message. These are the men that wrote the New Testament. These are the men that recorded this history for us so that we could read about it almost 2,000 years later. These are the men that actually formed and founded the church. After the apostles, He gave us the prophets. These are other men and women that during the very first century of the spread of the church, they spoke truth into the church. They helped discern truth from lies. They helped clarify and codify the message. Then He also gave us the evangelists. These are men and women uniquely gifted by God to speak to other people, to draw people. And we still have evangelists here today. Billy Graham was one of the most famous evangelists ever. These are people who God has given the unique ability to speak about the gospel, to speak about the truth, to invite people into Jesus, and He moves through them to cause people to become Christians. Many of you in the room, many of you watching, you became a Christian. You gave your life to Jesus because you heard an evangelist. You heard someone present the message. They gave you a choice, and you made it. And that helps spread the church. And then the last He says there is He also gave us pastors and teachers. And that's me. And that's this staff. That's this team. These are the men and women that God has called and equipped to lead His church every day, to draw people into himself, to train up the people who attend the church, to tend to the church. That's what a pastor was. It's a shepherd. It's to make sure the flock is cared for. And so what Paul's saying is, hey, the church is so important to God that he's given them all these gifts, and he's made sure that we have the Holy Spirit, and we have this amazing book that we can read, and we have these people who are going to be constantly teaching us and caring for us and pushing us forward. And it's for a reason. He gave us these gifts for a reason, and this is the reason. He says their responsibility, all of these gifts, including me, including the teachers, their responsibility, their job is to equip God's people to do His work and to build up the church, the body of Christ. So these gifts, the reason God gave us all these gifts is to equip us, which means to make ready, to prepare, to make adequate, to do what? All of Christ's work. Well, what's His work? Well, it's to love other people. His work is to become more like Him and less like me. His work is to build healthy marriages. His work is to create vibrant families. His work is to lead children to fall in love with Jesus and to lead children to treat other people like Jesus would treat them. His work is to send His followers out into the world to be the light of the world. His work is what we do. His work is sharing Jesus with everyone. His work is what we've been talking about in this entire series. His work is doing the good because it's going to produce a harvest of blessing. So what Paul is saying is, in good times, in bad times, in calm, in pandemic, you have been equipped because God has made sure that there were gifts available for you to use. Gifts of His Word, gifts of His Holy Spirit, gifts of evangelists, gifts of teachers, gifts of pastors, gifts of people who are in your life and ready to walk with you, to equip you to do every good work. And Paul makes that clear with the next verse. This is what he says. He says, this will continue until. He says, this will continue. This began 2,000 years ago. It will continue. There's no qualifiers here. There's not, this will continue as long as you can gather life. This will continue as long as you have 100% clarity on where your kid's going to go to school this fall. This will continue as long as I don't have to wear a mask in public. This will continue until we have more clarity on COVID. That's not what he says. He says this will continue until. You know how long it'll continue? Here's what he says. This will continue until we all come to such unity in our faith and knowledge of God's Son that we will be mature in the Lord, measuring up to the full and complete standard of Christ. Here's what Paul's saying. This will continue until we are perfectly like Jesus. Do you know where that happens? That happens in eternity with Jesus. Not here and not now. So what that means is God's work continues. God's equipping continues. God's preparing continues. Despite circumstances, despite COVID, despite uncertainty, despite things changing, despite the normal we long for being gone for a season. Paul is saying, yeah, I know. And God knows, which is why He gave you the apostles and the prophets and the evangelists and the pastors and the teachers. Those are all gifts you can run to, you can cling to, you can read about it, you can have conversations, you can learn, because I am at work and I am going to equip you and shape you to become the best mom, to become the best dad, to become the best teenager, to become the best employee, to become the best boss that you could be, because I've empowered you to change the world. And no virus can slow that down. Because I've given you gifts. And because I have a job for you to do. You know what Paul's telling us in this passage? He's telling us that, hey, when we feel uncertainty, when we try to go run for those old habit loops, when we try to find the old normal, when we say, you know what, until we can get back to that old normal, I feel inadequate, I feel ill-equipped, I don't feel like I can do this anymore. I don't feel prepared to know how to navigate this situation where my kids don't know when they're going to go back to school. I don't feel prepared to know how to handle this. I can't do it. What Paul's assuring us in this passage is, You know, you may be right. You can't. But God's church can. And He's giving you gifts. And He's still moving, and He's still working, and He's still equipping. So Wellspring, as we look to the new normal, and as we look into this uncertainty, can we be reminded today of this truth? God has given us everything we need to do everything that He wants us to do. That's what Paul's saying in this passage. Because that equipping is going to continue until we spend eternity with Him. And the equipping doesn't stop because normal changes. So my challenge for us today, my challenge for us in this room, as we look forward, as April talked about last week, as we seek to bring peace to situations, let's cling to the peace in our souls, that our God is at work. He is equipped us. He's not shocked by this. He's not afraid of this. He's not concerned. He's not confused. He's not on pins and needles trying to wait to see what the superintendent's going to decide next week about our schools. It's okay that we are. But God is saying, hey, you know what? Whatever the superintendent decides, I'm still going to equip you. Whatever happens with school, I'm still at work. Whatever happens with your job, whatever happens to when you can actually regather live again, I am still in your corner, and I am still supplying everything you need to do everything I want you to do. And I gave you my Son to prove it. So in the midst of the uncertainty, may we today find the peace that comes from knowing our God's in charge and He is at work. And one day the normal we long for may come back. But until then, I believe our best path forward is this. Until we can get back to normal, let's choose to embrace a new normal. Let's choose to lean in to this season. Let's choose to lean into the uncertainty. Let's choose to lean in to not knowing when or how or what or when. Let's choose to lean into that. And let's choose to be people that bring peace into the situations because of our calmness. Because of our ability to trust. Hey, I don't know how it's going to work, but I know my God's in charge. I know He's still equipping me. I know He's giving me everything I need to do everything He wants me to do. So I trust Him. And you can make that decision as well. And we can all make that decision. We can all choose today to say, you know what, until we get back to normal, let's choose to embrace a new normal. Let's choose to lean into this. Trust our God's at work. And let's allow Him to use us to change the world. Now, I know you may be asking, what does that look like? I get the chaos, I get the uncertainty. What is this new normal? How do we get there? Well, to answer that question, like I said earlier, I had a conversation with my wife and with Eric and April, and I want to share that conversation with you right now. Let's check it out. All right, we are going to have a conversation talking about new normal and how we're all working together to establish that new normal. You guys know my wife, Danielle. You probably know Eric and April Colquitt. They are our children's director and student director. They're also some of our best friends, and we have actually been sort of social distancing together over this season. You know, everybody's kind of done that, had a little bubble. And so we know a lot about what this has felt like. We know a lot about how to establish whatever can be established in this season. Between us, we have 6 kids, one going into high school this year each, which is crazy, middle schooler and an elementary. And so we just really thought this would be a really great way to sort of have a conversation about how we are trying to establish a new normal and how we as your church want to do everything we can to help you establish a new normal. So, guys, when I say normal,
gosh.
Oh gosh, exactly.
So it's really funny that we're talking about this word. I mean, just that normal is, everybody's talking about when we're going back to normal, we're going back to normal. Years ago, I was walking through Home Goods and I saw this sign that stuck with me. It said, the only thing normal around here is the setting on the dryer. And because we have a family of 5, I do a lot of laundry. And I think about that all the time. And every day it feels like since March, that's a phrase that has gone through my mind is that there's nothing normal around here.
That's true.
And I've talked to a lot of people. I know I have felt this way, but a lot of people are really, not only is it not normal, but they feel like they're not doing anything really well right now. Because, even if they're not still working at home, if you're a working parent, they're trying to figure that out. If they're single, everything's different about their social life. If they're empty nesters, there's a lot that they're trying to navigate, but especially if they're parents. And it's just that feeling of not only is it not normal, but nobody really feels like they're doing anything well right now. Right. And that's really been difficult.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I've had a lot of those same conversations. But one of the things that I just kind of want to encourage parents in is that if you are a parent, especially, or if you've been around children, you have done this before. If you think back to when we had infants, or when you brought a child into your home for the very first time, there's a phrase that parents will say, like, we're adjusting to the new normal. Right. And we've all had to do that. And when you bring a child into your home for the very first time, there is a new normal. And so the good news is that you've done it before and you already know how to do it. Think about when you brought that baby home from the hospital, or when that child came to live with you for the very first time. How did you know what the new normal needed to be? They tell you what the new normal is going to be because they have basic needs, and they're hungry, or they're tired, or they're ready to play, or they're ready to explore. And so just like when we brought our children home from the hospital, or when they came into our home for the very first time, we can adjust to the new normal based on what their basic needs are, really. And the good news is their basic needs haven't changed. They still need to eat and they still need to sleep. And so you just can kind of look at, well, what are the basic needs for our family? What are my children telling me, like based on their cues, what they need in this season? And then ask yourself, how are we going to adjust, and just sort of build out from there. It's not the whole answer, but it's a place to start as we kind of adjust to what that's going to be.
Well, that's the confidence part of it, because it's just this, when the normal is taken away, a lot of our confidence taken away. And I think that's true for if you don't have kids as an adult. I know my markers are for myself too. So I think it's across the board.
Well, and real quick, before we even dive in, we keep using this word, but can we all just dispel the myth? There's no such thing as normal. There never has been normal. There never will be normal. Yes, we're all talking about this fall, but when's the last fall we didn't have to stop school because of a hurricane or flooding? Kids get sick. Like we have this idea of normal. But we really don't know what's coming tomorrow. And so we've just sort of been reminded of that right now. But with all that said, you guys, we've all sort of been in quarantine mode, summer mode, where, I don't know about you, but kids kind of go crazy in the summer. We kind of go crazy in the summer. So, as we're rounding the corner, as we're looking towards the fall, as we're looking towards school starting in whatever form it's going to start, how are you guys, and how can we help our people kind of move out of quarantine mode and really start to put some legs around this new normal? When school is still up in the air and things like that, how can we, in our homes, begin to establish this new normal and these new patterns?
Yeah. So that's actually something we've talked about a lot. And one of the things that we've done, and I know they have as well, is putting anchors in your week. Because there's nothing to mark the days right now. There haven't been really since March. Or if you're still working, you have your work days, but then the weekends look so different, or the evenings look so different. So it's up to us to choose to put anchors and markers in our week. Obviously, for us, one of those main ones, and we would encourage for anybody, that Sunday can still be an anchor to your week. Even though you're not physically coming to this location, we're still giving you every resource for online church, and we're trying to equip you to be the spiritual leaders in your home for your kids and everything. We'll talk about that, I think. But make Sunday mornings as much like church as possible. One of the things, it's so funny, our kids all respond differently to how they want to come to church online at home. But our oldest David gets up, he puts on a collared shirt, he gets dressed, he brings his Bible and his notebook, and he's ready. And he takes time to prepare his heart. We all clear our distractions. We've been encouraging all of us to sing along. All the things that you can do to make Sunday morning still feel like an anchor in your week. A big one is decide ahead of time. If it's more than just you in your home, decide ahead of time which service you're going to watch. And prioritize that, because
and make sure everybody knows. Like, you're like, hey, we're watching the 10 o'clock service tomorrow. Everybody be ready.
And then, it's been actually really fun in some ways, because we've actually, like, I've planned some, we usually watch, well, he watches all of them. He can't not. Sundays are difficult for us. But we've been planning breakfast around that, or a meal around whichever service, because we have the unique opportunity that we've all just watched it. We haven't even had the drive home to fight. And so we can talk immediately about the message, and it's actually led to some really enriching conversations at home. So anchors in your week, make a priority, choose which service you're going to watch. It's been very important for us.
That's a lot of what we do too. Another thing that I would encourage parents to do is make the Wellspring Kids program a part of your Sunday morning as well, because we have made it even easier for your family to watch Wellspring Kids together. We've put it on our Wellspring Kids YouTube page. And so now you can put it on your TV and you can watch together as a family, or at least one parent can sit down and watch with the kids, and then maybe do it before you watch the service, or after that, whatever, and then just talk about it. And when you watch with your kids, then it gives you the opportunity to be able to talk to them all week long about what they're learning and be able to help them apply that at home. And then we also give you like an activity page that you can do just to extend a little bit of what they're learning and help them practice those things at home.
And it's the same for students as well. It's not a Sunday thing that we do for students, but every single week we are putting out content on Wednesdays that has to do with whatever series we're in. And I just want to encourage you as parents to make sure your students are following along with us. Make sure that they are walking along with whatever series we're in. On Wednesday, we'll put a teaching video up. So have them watch it. Have them watch it on YouTube. It's super easy for them to do. And so that's one thing. The other thing I would say is, there are different ways that you can engage right now in students. You might feel comfortable having your students come to a tribe gathering that as they meet together, but you might feel like, hey, that's not a safe thing for us to do right now. Well, we're going to create a way for you to follow along at home. We're going to have you download the curriculum and then just kind of walk through that with them. Or they might want to invite a friend, come over, watch the video, and then kind of walk through it with them. The other thing I'd say is maybe you're in this season and maybe you're brand new to Wellspring. You found us online, and we want to encourage you to engage in these areas as well. If you're new to Wellspring, students in particular, we're going to create a parent resource page where you can see the curriculum, you can find contact information for tribe leaders, and everything you need to kind of help them connect. And so I would just encourage you, if you have a student, make sure they're following along with us on a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's good. And if you keep Wednesdays a part of your students' rhythm, that's another anchor for them. So they get Sundays watching Wellspring at home, and then they get Wednesdays watching students.
That's right.
And I'll just say, as a parent that doesn't serve in Wellspring students, that the content that students are doing is always so good. And I always get something out of it for myself too. But another thing that, not just about Wellspring, but do something fun on Fridays. You know, you talked about how even for working people who are, working outside their home and stuff, that helps mark the end of the week so that you're keeping track. That can be another anchor to your week. You say, all right, it's Friday. How are we going to start the weekend?
Something
whether
to look forward to.
As a family, or we're going to get together with our bubble of friends or something like that, just to make it fun.
Yeah, you have to create those yourself.
Yeah.
You have to choose to do it in the season.
Yeah.
It's not just happening. And so I think that's important.
So anchors, that's really helpful. Just create markers in the week where you know what you're going to do. It provides a little bit of certainty, can create some patterns, create some habits. As we look towards the fall and new normal, what other habits are you finding that we had before, but because of quarantining and COVID, what new habits have you had to create for yourselves, for your families, for your kids? and how can we help other people do the same thing?
Well, I'll jump in on that one because, we talked about how it's summer, and so we've kind of just all had these like la-ti-da, whatever. Everybody's doing whatever they want to do. And we're getting ready to, with our kids and our family, like crank that routine back up, even though, we don't know exactly what's going to be school yet. We know that we're going to be having to put a routine in place regardless of what is going to be going on with school. And if you think about it, I'll go back to what I said about, the new normal of having an infant. Food and rest helps us function best. Like we can build a schedule around those basic needs. And in the spring, what I saw a lot of families do, and I'm not knocking it because we did it too, we just were reacting to something that we didn't expect to happen. And so we kind of all went, like we have free time to just do whatever. And so we ate around the clock and we slept around the clock and we just sort of like let all those schedules and routines go out the window. And it was great for a while. But we know that we can't be productive living like that all the time. It's not best for us the longer that this goes on. And so we're just getting ready in our house to start putting the routine more solid back in place.
A lot of that routine has to do with schedule. So when are we getting up at the same time? Are we going to bed at the same time? Or, lunch and dinner can kind of be scheduled out in a lot of ways, especially dinner. But put those in place, and that'll help your family thrive in this new normal. And even for students, think about limiting their access to devices at the end of the day. As it gets time for them to go to sleep, because that helps them get that good rest that they need. Things that we can begin to put in place to get them back to a new normal. Schedule.
Like we're not going to stay up and make sure that they go to sleep necessarily, but we are going to say, hey, you should be going to bed soon, and like let's start powering down devices.
And it depends on the age of your kids, because
absolutely.
Well, and what I find is even if you can't control when they go to sleep, you can definitely control when they wake up.
And when they go to their room.
And if you go ahead and wake them up early enough, they'll eventually fall asleep.
Should I tell them how I have to wake up our kids sometimes? I learned this from a great mom. But if you take a water bottle and just some cold water and just like you're watering a house plant, just a little spray, it gets them up a little faster. We have heavy sleepers.
We'll have to try that.
We just go in and gently kiss our kids.
Oh, okay.
No, we don't. We don't do that.
You don't have 3 boys. It's a difference. So anyway.
So as we're talking about habits and patterns, you and I have talked about this. Just for people watching, explain the value of that for kids.
So as y'all were talking, I was sitting there thinking like, just hearing us talk about it helps me breathe a little deeper, a little easier, because it lowers your anxiety. Kids won't tell you that they're anxious, but when they don't know what each day is going to hold for so many days in a row, it creates anxiety in them, and they'll show it in different ways. Adults will show it in different ways. All of us will, but having a routine really does help lower the anxiety. If you know what time you're going to go to bed, what time you're going to wake up, what the day may hold, no matter what school looks like for your family, that will help them settle into and have peace. It's I loved your message last week about that. It will help bring some peace into the situation, because your brain won't have to be working so hard to try to figure out what the next step is. Kids through 95-year-olds, same way. You just want to have that routine because it helps lower the anxiety in the situation.
So speaking of routine and how kids love routine, and how kids want routine. What do we do about school?
Great.
Come on, give me your answer.
That is a very good question.
What should we do about school?
So here's the deal. We can't answer that question for anybody. But you know the answer for what's best for your child. And I would just say, and we would say, become a student of your child. Know what they need the most. And there's as we've been learning, there's lots of different options out there that our school system is going to be putting out. So if for your family, if your child is going to be best staying at home, do that. Figure out ways to make that happen. If it's best for them to go and be at school, then do that. You know your child the best, and lean into that. I think the other thing that we should talk about here is, because there's so many options and families are going to be doing lots of different things, we can't get into a place where we're comparing what we're doing to what they're doing, because we can control what we can control. We can control our family. Other families are doing what's best for them. And so we just need to be careful not not comparing and not judging what other families are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. And I think we can even take it a step further and encourage each other in those decisions. Say, gosh, that sounds like a great decision for your family. I bet it wasn't an easy decision to make, but we're supporting you no matter what. There's just so much grace for each other in this season. But just to jump off of that, I think one of the things is that think about what's realistic for your family and for your kids, because there are so many options and there are so many different things, and we're not going to be able to do it all. We are just not. And so for me, I always have to remind myself just to keep it simple. When I was growing up, I hated doing math problems, and especially word problems. My dad would always write, that thing at the top of my paper, like KISS, keep it simple. Silly, we'll say that. That's not what he wrote, but it was all in love. Keep it simple. And so to me, that just means like maybe for each one of your children, you ask yourself, what are the 2 things that they need most in this season? Just what are the 2 things that they need? So maybe it's they need physical activity. Maybe it's they need social interaction. It could be that they need a little extra academic support. Maybe they need a creative outlet. Whatever your children need, and then say, how are we going to meet those 2 needs for that child? Are we going to be able to do that ourselves? Or are we going to need to resource some outside help? So just as an example, our almost 9-year-old Emily, her 2 greatest needs are she needs some academic support with math. We do not feel super equipped in that area of all the subjects. Like that's probably the one where we're the least equipped to help her. And so that might be an area where we say this fall, we're going to resource someone outside of our home, a tutor or a high school student to help her with just learning from somebody else. And then another thing is she needs physical activity. She needs outside time when she doesn't get it. We all know and we can tell. And so that is something that we can resource. And so we can make sure that we schedule that for her to make sure that at the end of the day or even in the morning, she gets a little bit of time outside or whatever.
I love that, the keeping it simple part, because it can feel so overwhelming to think that you're trying to meet all the needs of all these things in our lives that have been taken away from us. But it can be simple in 2 things. And I think the other thing that's really important is to, I love how you said, don't hold yourself to the standard to have to be all things for all people. Thing 2 keeps it simple. And then you don't have to compare yourself. Don't go to Pinterest. Whatever you do. Those are staged photos, and
100%.
And that's not what it's going to look like. And I think that that's what will contribute to the feeling of I'm not doing any of it well. But if you're doing the simplest thing that you need to do for yourself or for your children or for your family, then at the end of this, you will look back and say, wow, we saw growth in this. We saw that we were more confident in this place.
I'll say Pinterest is the occasional exception, not the standard. So just remind yourself of that when you go searching for ideas. But one of the things that we are going to be working on even this week through our social media and Wellspring Kids and students is just resourcing you with some other things like watch this week, because we're going to be putting out sample schedules, and even something we did in the spring is we put out some menus for families, like just to take that off of your plate and to try to take some of the thinking work out of it. We're going to be putting out some things like chores that are appropriate for children your age. That's something that they can do to help create routine and schedule. So just some things like that. So just be watching for some of those things that we're going to help with this week.
Yeah. Here's the deal. We know that we have thrown a lot of things at you in this conversation, but one of the things that we'd also say is just focus on what you can do in this moment. So let's talk about some fun things. So
this is Eric's wheelhouse.
He's fun dad.
He's fun dad.
So,
hold on, I have to say this. Yeah. If you're with Eric somewhere, somebody will just music will appear. And it's usually, he's got a Bluetooth speaker somewhere and he's just decided to play music and make it fun. It's the best.
So this pandemic has taken away a lot of things from us. And feels like we can't do the things we want to do. But there are some things we can definitely do, some ways we can still have fun with our family. It feels like the other thing I would say is, you want us to spend more time with our family? That's all we've done is spend time with our family. But we haven't really been, in a lot of cases, intentional about it. And we haven't. And but there's some things that we can do. So outside is something that you can do right now. Go outside. The weather's still great. You can, and it's cheap. It's mostly free. You can go to the beach. You can go grab some food and eat outside. Ride a bike. Lots of things you can do outside. Just go do that with your family and be intentional about it. Another thing our family loves is games. Go invest in some board games.
He's the master of games.
And then, spend time. That's how we spend time together. That's how we connect, and it's very intentional. And then, or you might be more of a movie family.
Yeah.
Say every week, every Friday, we talked about Friday earlier, we're going to watch a movie and just plan on that. So just think about the things you can do right now to be intentional with your family and have some fun.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think that it's really important that, I love how you talk about until we can get back to normal, let's choose to embrace a new normal, which is all about our perspective. We can see ideas all day. I think that these are important. We do need to put some habits back in our life, but I think our perspective on it really is where we start, and then we implement the habits and the anchors that we need so that our brains don't have to work quite as hard because they're fried. And so, keeping that perspective, choosing to embrace the new normal will provide so much peace as we're navigating this fall.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and it's not only choosing, it's knowing you're not embracing it alone. We're with you, and God is with you. And as we talked about, in the message, He's still in control. He's still equipping us. He's still growing us. He is still giving us everything we need to do everything that He wants us to do. And so, as we kind of wrap up, I just want to encourage you. We're just two families who are walking through the same thing you're walking through. God has picked us to be the pastors and teachers right now in your life, and we hold very dear the role of partnering with Him to equip you. And so, we hope today that you feel equipped, that you feel encouraged, that even though this doesn't feel like normal to us, it's normal to God because He's in charge. And He knows exactly what's coming tomorrow, and He is at work and will be at work. So, encouragement for all of us in the room. Let's stop chasing the old normal. Let's remember that our God's still in charge, that He's still equipping us. And let's all choose to partner with each other and work together to create that new normal for ourselves, for our kids, and even for our community. Christians should be the calmest, most rational, peace-bringing people in this moment. And so as we embrace this new normal, let's share it with our neighbors, let's share it with our friends, and let's reveal that we know we have a God who loves us. We have a God who is still equipping us. We have a God who is still in charge. And He is going to walk with us for as long as this takes. So thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Thank you for joining us today. We have one more song, and then we're going to wrap up. But I did want to say one of the things that we're doing as a church to help partner with this and help equip is we're launching a brand new series next week that I am incredibly excited about. It's a series on a topic you probably never heard discussed in church before, but I promise you won't want to miss it. And I promise it is going to provide help and clarity for every person that'll watch. So thanks for being with us. Got one more song.